take a deep breath in. As you breathe in a resourceful feeling of relaxation. And as you exhale, just get a sense that any stress, tension, worries are starting to leave your body in your outward breath. Breathing in that resourceful feeling of relaxation, exhaling tension, and just noticing that with each and every breath, you're starting to feel more and more relaxed. And I don't know, perhaps, if there's echoes of tension around your eyes, your jaw, your neck, or your forehead. But start to become aware of the clues of tension. And the clues of tension are that when you subtly move that part of your body, it feels more relaxed than it did before. So if you choose to relax the muscles around your eyes, you might notice they change. And if you choose to relax the muscles in your jaw, perhaps there's a subtle shift that does indeed make you feel deeper relaxed. As you breathe in and out through your nose, notice that a clue of tension is that you're breathing from your chest. And as you exhale further, notice that the next inward breath in starts to feel like it's coming lower down, nearer your diaphragm, closer to your belly. So as you breathe in, you're able to breathe in and out more and more effortlessly, taking you deeper and deeper, relaxed. Now, as your body relaxes, your imagination becomes more active. Because what is your imagination if it isn't the interface between the conscious and the unconscious mind? I want you to think of your unconscious mind as a library of every memory, every belief, every thought, every value. And I want you to imagine somewhere in that library is a book about birds. And for you, maybe that book is dominated with unpleasant memories and bad experiences and beliefs that aren't true and feelings that weren't real. So we need to add some new pages to that book. Because right now, if anyone had that book of birds in their library, in their subconscious mind, they would feel exactly as you feel. And most people don't. Most people don't have a big book on birds. They have a tiny book with maybe 2 or 3 pages. And all they know is names of different types of birds and no particular beliefs or feelings about them. And maybe that's why they don't have any anxiety around birds, because in their subconscious mind, the memories are neutral or positive. The beliefs are neutral or even helpful. And in most cases, they go through life ignoring birds every single week. I want you to use the power of your imagination to imagine a large empty room. A large empty room where there is 2 chairs. You are sitting on one chair, and on the chair right next to you is a robotic clone of you, an android, not even human, but created from the future, so it looks exactly like you. I want you to imagine looking at that android, that robot that looks identical to you, and thinking that nobody would know that you are not them and they're not you. And then imagine what it would be like to no longer be in your body, but to be in the body of this android. And in the android, they don't have a library in their subconscious mind. They have lines of code about what they associate with birds. And most of them would lead anyone to a negative evaluation of birds, believing that they couldn't cope. But I wonder what would happen if we added new lines of code, created new associations and new beliefs. Then, wouldn't the experience be different? I want you to imagine climbing up out of that chair in this robotic android body. And in the middle of a room, I want you to imagine there is a table, and on that table is bulletproof glass, forming a box, the kind of thing that might protect very valuable jewelry. And if you can imagine something like that, just let me know by nodding your head. In this android body, turn around and see that the real you, the version of you that has any fears and anxieties about birds, is safely sat very far away from this box. You're not you, you're in the body of an android that just happens to look like you. And I want you to imagine walking up to an empty, sealed, bulletproof glass box on top of a table. And I want you to imagine that there is a tiny, tiny bird that you would need a magnifying glass to see, and it's safely under this bulletproof glass. I want you to imagine that you know what this bird looks like, even if it's tiny, perhaps the size of a tiny coin. I want you to imagine that this bird is getting slightly bigger. I want you to imagine that as it starts to get bigger, you start to notice that there is a creative part of you, a playful part, an imaginative part of you. And I want you to start seeing this bird, and this first bird is a chicken. A tiny chicken that's starting to get slightly bigger, but maybe it's a quarter of the size of a normal chicken. And I want you to accept the suggestion that you have the ability to change how this chicken looks like. And the first thing to do is to give it big Disney-style eyes. Big, bulging, friendly eyes. And notice that as you give it that, it looks more human-like. I want you to imagine that with this chicken, you're giving it some kind of hat. You decide what hat this chicken has. But now it has big eyes. It has an odd-looking hat. And I want you to imagine what it would be like to give this chicken some footwear. Colourful footwear. And the more you smile, the more new associations you're creating. Now, I don't know what footwear this chicken would have, but just make sure it's useful to cross roads, because isn't that what chickens do? I want you to imagine that you're giving this chicken big teeth and a friendly smile. Now has big friendly eyes, odd-looking hat, snazzy footwear, and a big smile. And I want you to change perhaps other things. Maybe give it a mustache or some facial hair. Maybe you're giving this chicken, if it's a cockerel, a mohawk instead of that red frilly bit that normally goes on its head. And if it's a hen, maybe give it something else. Maybe earrings, maybe jewelry. I want you to notice that this chicken seems to have a personality. An unusual, eccentric personality, perhaps. I want you to get a sense that this chicken has a voice. Maybe a squeaky voice, maybe a silly voice, maybe a friendly voice. And I want you to imagine this chicken is telling you the things they go through on an average day. I imagine the life of a chicken is quite repetitive. If it's a hen, they eat some food, they lay some eggs. They eat some food, they lay some eggs. But I want you to hear it from the chicken as to what their life is like. But I want you to ask about this chicken's dreams and ambitions. What does the chicken really want to do? Perhaps you can imagine that something changes with the feathers. Maybe you can imagine them with arms under those feathers, and they've always been there, they've just been hidden. Maybe it shows you a shiny watch, or perhaps something else. I want you to imagine that the feathers perhaps are less feathery, maybe looking more like a butterfly's wings, but albeit on a chicken. I want you to get a sense that you're having a chat with this chicken now, hearing its odd voice, seeing its strange clothes. And maybe this chicken is worried about something. I want the chicken to tell you something that can create a feeling of empathy between you and that chicken. As it does so, I want you to notice that you start to feel more deeply relaxed. It's difficult to feel anxious when there's no threat at all. The chicken doesn't even have the ability to do anything than just be this chicken. It has an odd personality, maybe a strange voice, and definitely an odd taste in clothes. And notice just how low that feeling of anxiety is, because new emotions are associated with this chicken. The sillier the voice, the more you notice those crazy accessories, the more new emotions are linked to this chicken. If your unconscious mind feels comfortable enough knowing that this is just in your imagination, to remove that bulletproof glass, just let me know by nodding your head. The bulletproof glass disappears. I want you to imagine that the chicken says thank you in a strange way. The chicken wishes you a wonderful day and just decides to hop off and go outside because for some reason it wants to find some seeds to pick or an egg to lay. Imagine the bulletproof glass goes back down, creates a new container, and inside there I want you to imagine a pigeon, but a pigeon that's half the size of a normal pigeon. You're completely safe on the other side of that bulletproof glass. As that imaginative, creative, playful part starts to be a costume designer with this pigeon. Imagine giving the pigeon, again, those big, friendly eyes. Maybe this pigeon also has teeth and a smile, but this one has a tongue. And it sticks out, almost like one of those friendly dogs where the tongue is always poking outside. Or maybe you've seen a cat where the tongue peeks out a little bit and it just looks very silly or cute. I want you to imagine that this pigeon also has a voice, but it also has a lisp. When it talks, it kind of talks in a way where the S's are more like th. And there's something about that that makes it seem friendlier for some reason. Imagine this pigeon having a a different type of headwear. Maybe it's a hat, maybe a baseball cap, maybe a top hat, maybe dreadlocks, maybe something else. But you're making this pigeon seem very friendly and very harmless, creating new associations. This pigeon also has very stylish footwear, and maybe it's stilettos, maybe it's knee-high boots, maybe it's candy cane shoes, or maybe something else entirely. Maybe it's just socks or rollerblades or roller skates or something else. Maybe you can imagine human feet on this pigeon, albeit miniature. I want you to get a sense that as you hear this strange speaking pigeon, something about its personality that just seems very relaxed, very easygoing. They don't care about you. And for some reason, they're constantly hungry. As you speak to this pigeon, they only have one concern in the entire world: finding something to eat. That's all they care about. I want you to get a sense that this is a hungry little bird with a big appetite. And I want you to tell you what its favourite foods are, and it might surprise you as to what its favourite foods are. Hear it in that strange voice, with that lisp. What does the pigeon like for supper? What is it like as a snack? As you're hearing this pigeon tell you, I want you to get a sense that feelings of anxiety are draining away. This bird doesn't care about you. It cares about bits of bread, leftover chips, whatever it can get. Its little paws, and I want you to imagine under those feathers are indeed paws. Cute little paws, maybe like panda paws, or that of a little bear. I want you to get a sense that these feathers aren't grey or white or black. The feathers are changing colour to vibrant colours: purples, pinks, yellows. It's almost like this pigeon is in a cabaret with the most brightest colours, perhaps with some makeup as well. Maybe more accessories. And maybe there's painted nails on those paws of that little pigeon. I want you to get a sense that as easygoing as this pigeon is, for some reason it really cares about its style. Constantly pruning itself to make sure it looks its best. And maybe part of you thinks it looks ridiculous, but this pigeon's taking pride in how it looks, even if it does look a bit scruffy. And then imagine it has some kind of a cape or cloak or some kind of outer clothing. Maybe it's like a superhero cloak. And as you see this pigeon looking this way, I want you to ask the pigeon what it really wants and what it really feels about humans. Maybe it likes the fact that humans discard enough food for it to have some snacks. But it doesn't like it when it's being chased or shooed away. But mainly it doesn't even think about humans. It only thinks about food and other pigeons. And as you create these new associations, notice the anxiety gets lower and lower and lower. And I want you to give this pigeon a name. Maybe a name suitable for its personality and how it looks. When you've decided on that name, let me know by nodding your head. And if you feel it's okay to lift this bulletproof glass so you can have a clearer conversation with this pigeon, just let me know by nodding your head. There we go. The bulletproof glass box disappears, but the pigeon isn't interested in you. The pigeon's got food to find. It says goodbye in its chirpy, cheeky way, hearing it with that lisp. And then you see it, cheerfully bouncing away towards a source of food. And I want you to get a sense that you can handle it around birds. You no longer see them as a threat. You just see them as mild-mannered, harmless creatures that just seem a bit odd. The bulletproof glass returns to this table, and then underneath is a bird that is sleeping, that is pretending to be dead. It's not dead. It's just pretending. It's playing a game, and you're seeing it play that game. But then again, I want you to add some accessories. Because it's sleeping, maybe you give it a duvet or a sleeping bag. Perhaps you give it one of those sleeping hats that they used to have in Victorian times. Maybe you can hear it snoring, and it's a really loud snore. It's not moving. That means you get to do whatever you want with this little bird. And I want you to imagine it has pajamas. The snazziest pajamas that you can think of, just suited to a sleeping bird. This snoring bird is just there with its brightly coloured pajamas. Make its eyes nice and big, even if you can tell that their eyes are closed. Just know that there are big bright eyes there with their eyelids shut. In fact, this bird, I think, knows that you know it's sleeping rather than pretending to be dead. And maybe you can see a cheeky little smile as you look at this bird and you think this is just such a harmless bird. There's nothing about this that causes any anxiety, and it's not moving anyway. And if you feel comfortable enough, just let me know and we'll take off that bulletproof glass container. The container disappears, but the bird continues to pretend to be dead, but you can hear it snoring. You can see it tossing and turning, perhaps, pretending to be dead, but just sleeping. And I want you to get a sense that there's nothing you need to do here, because the bird isn't going to go anywhere anyway. So I want you to imagine wishing this bird sweet dreams. And as you do that, I wonder what you can imagine the bird is dreaming about. Just imagine it's having a wonderful dream for the kind of bird that it is. And in one of those thought bubbles, imagine what dream this bird is having. What adventures is it going on? And as you see this bird on these crazy adventures, you get a sense that even if you don't like birds, by accepting that it's a dislike rather than a fear, you open up new emotional pathways. And there's been people that you didn't like before that you became friends with. Family members that for a while you didn't like because you fell out with them, and now you get on fine. So it's easier to have something you don't like and then find a way to like it, or just accept that you don't like it, but not give it the time of day to affect your emotional state. I want you to get a sense that with these new associations, you now believe that you can handle being around birds even if you don't like them. You may have no desire to touch them, but even if they move, even if they flap, it doesn't affect you in the same way that it did. Because from this point forward, you always have the ability to imagine what they would look like with those hats and those shoes and the bag and the accessories, the jewelries and the makeup, the eyewear, the clothes, the squeaky voice, the lisp, and all these things. And then by thinking of them in that way, isn't it strange how the anxiety can't get so high? In fact, I want you to try to get anxious as you see these birds around you. The chicken looking for food, the pigeon looking for food, and this other bird just sleeping. Try as hard as you can to get anxious, and notice that as ridiculous as they look, it becomes so difficult. In fact, the harder you try to feel anxious, the more tempted you are to smile or laugh. These birds can't intimidate you. They couldn't scare anything. The more they try and threaten or intimidate you, the more ridiculous it becomes. Even if they try to get close, you pay it no mind, because these birds don't have that power over you anymore. Say goodbye to these birds. Notice that they say goodbye back. Even the sleeping one forgets that it's pretending to be dead and says goodbye as you return to the chair. And then imagine shifting perspective from the android to your normal self, and realizing that all those changes have also applied to that normal version of you. As you also see the birds in a ridiculous way, you could walk up to them, say hello, have a chat, and no anxiety is there. Because in the book about birds in your subconscious mind, the first few chapters are now dominated by this experience, this way of thinking about birds. The old memories become just footnotes at the end of the book. But now how you think about birds are this experience, but also cartoon version of birds that you've seen, humorous interactions that you've seen on videos, perhaps where you've seen birds actually talking like parrots, edited videos where it looks like they have personalities or they have arms. And as the book in your subconscious mind about birds is now dominated by positive emotions, positive beliefs, positive experiences, that even if you don't like them, and there's a part of you that actually does, they no longer have the kind of power over you to affect your emotion. And even if they did, those emotions go away rapidly. The important thing is, from this point forward, anytime you're around a bird, your intuitive voice in your head will say, I can handle this. Even if it's tough, I can handle this. And by saying that you can handle this, it opens up the resources to enable you to handle this, opening up wonderful possibilities of new countries you can visit, new places you can walk to. And I want you to imagine yourself, perhaps in a year's time, a year of having different associations and beliefs and ways of thinking about birds, and see yourself perhaps in Italy, perhaps in a different country, perhaps having a meal and there's birds around and you pay them no mind. They're just background for you, just as they are for so many other people. It's now time to return to the present. I want you to take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your nose. Just wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes, as I now count from 1 to 10 to awaken you. Starting to count. 1, 2, 3, waking up. 4, 5, 6, more alert. 7, 8, open your eyes, open your eyes. 9, 10, wide awake, wide awake, wide awake.